unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So this morning we'll continue with our chapter Bendo by Great Master Dogen. I won't talk about absolutely everything in this chapter because it would take days. People write whole books about it. So I just picked out most things I think are helpful and missed out a few things I think are also helpful, but just for the sake of being able to not just be rushing hither and yon, I've tried to kind of keep it simple, as it were, and just focus on certain things. Well, he gives us a brief outline of when he first became a monk and he wanted to find the truth. And he traveled all over Japan looking for a good teacher. He found Myozen, who was a Rinzai teacher, but he didn't quite do it. It wasn't quite enough. So he and Myozen both went to China to look for the Dharma. And they went to many temples, and finally, as we know, he ended up with Tendo Nyojo, who was his true master, as it were. He learned from him, and eventually he came back to Japan to teach what he'd learned in China and pass on the Dharma. He says he wished to rescue all living beings by spreading the truth. I was as a man who carried a heavy burden, this great burden of, I've got to, it's up to me kind of thing. And finally he had to give up this idea of, I am going to spread the truth, it's up to me, and to wait for a better time when people were more ready to hear it. With this idea of the heavy burden, it's up to me, I have to do it, nobody else can do it, as it were, it has to be me. It's a burden. And when you first start to learn Buddhism, sometimes we're very tempted to tell all our friends and relatives about it. I did this, bored them all to death, didn't help anybody understand anything about Buddhism because I knew very little about it myself. But I was all mad keen, and I just became a pain, actually. So I had to stop that and actually learn something about it for myself and stop trying to convince everybody how great it was. So, but not everybody does that. But it can be a temptation when you first something that's really good, you want to share it with everybody, which is nice, but we're not always skillful. And actually, people have to find their own, the mind that seeks the way, wanting to find the truth, wanting to find something that's more than just our little daily life. People have to do that for themselves. You can't do it for somebody. When you think of our own life, maybe you've always had that aspiration to find something more than just my daily life. It's, maybe it wasn't quite satisfactory. There's something more, and different things can bring us to that. But usually it's not by somebody trying to persuade us. It's because we see somebody who really inspires us, maybe somebody at work who lives in a different way. Maybe they seem more contented and less kinder and less pulled around by things. We might think, what's different about this person, Or we come across a teacher, or we find something on the internet and think, oh, maybe I'll try that. Or like with Dogen's own life, something happens in our own life. Some tragedy, actually, like with Dogen. His mother died when he was about 8, I think. And seeing the incense smoke rising at her funeral, he thought, impermanence, nothing lasts. I want to find something true and real. And these are different things that bring one to training, but people have to find it for themselves. That's how he found it. Some of us may have found the same way, or just had a feeling there's something missing in my life, and we start searching for something. But you can't get another person to do that. We have to have that arise for ourselves, as we actually know when you think about it. So Dogen comes back from China and then decides to put down the burden. He's not going to try and get everyone to practice the Dharma that he's learned. He realizes the time isn't ripe yet. It's not quite time. So he wanders around from place to place. And it does come across people who are ready to learn. He says that there are true trainees to be found, those who truly turn their backs on fame and gain in order to search for the true way. Now, all through his writings, Dogen talks about fame and gain and the need to give them up. He himself came from a powerful and, I guess, wealthy family, and he could see that there are dangers in getting caught up in wealth and position and so forth, and so he guarded himself against them. He always stayed away from ministers and people with power and wealth and so forth, and he always encouraged his disciples to do the same. He felt it was a trap, fame and gain. Now he gives us a very brief outline of Buddhism as it was transmitted from from Shakyamuni Buddha to Makakasho and all our ancestors in our lineage, the Zen lineage, and how it came down to China, the Chinese ancestors, and now he has brought it to Japan. And five styles of teaching emerged, he says, which all slightly different, but as he says, they are all part of the one truth of the Buddha mind. He didn't believe in sects, and these people have the truth and those people don't. Everybody, he says, has the way, the true way. All the Buddhas and ancestors have taught that the true way is through meditation, regardless of lineage. And the little sects and all those differences don't really matter. It's actually what you do. Now there's a section in Bendo that Reverend Master Jiyu left out. I don't know why she did that. It might have been because she didn't feel she could do it justice in translation, or it hadn't been translated very well, or the people weren't ready for it. But it's a section that people often recite in Zen temples, actually. And she left it out. But it's there in Reverend Hubert's translation of Bendo, so you can find it if you'd like to see it. It's very nice. But I wonder if Reverend Master had intended to put it in somewhere else so we could recite it at another time. I don't know. But anyway. Now we have a series of questions and answers which forms the bulk of the Bendo about the value of meditation. And these are questions that people might well have been asking in Dogen's time, and probably did, because many of them are questions that people ask today. Same thing, same questions, And Dogen sets up this imaginary disciple, the straw disciple, who asks all these questions, so he can answer them. The disciple is full of doubt about meditation. If it was a real person, there'd be a real pain, but it's just his pretend disciple, we hope, who's not just asking, well, what about this and what about that and why do we do this and that makes no sense. It's just so that Dogen can, tell us why meditation is so valuable. The first one, it says, the pretend disciple says, well, why is meditation, and specifically Zazen, which is our form of just sitting, why is this the true gateway to the truth? Because Dogen says, this is the way. It's unequivocal, this is the way to find the truth. And this disciple says, well, there's all sorts of other practices which are much easier. Reciting the name of Amitabha Buddha, much easier than just sitting, Reading scriptures, a lot easier. And how can just sitting lead to realization? Because always other people do these other things. And Dogen says, well, this is what the Buddha taught. He taught meditation. That's what he handed down to us. And all the ancestors have done the same. They've handed down the practice of meditation, the true gateway to the truth. And he says, you have to have true faith, true belief, true faith. And if people don't have any faith in the way, you can't force them. As we just said, you can talk about Buddhism all day, but if people don't have that, they don't have that wish to learn it. There's no, you just leave it be. Let people find it out when they're ready. You can't force people. The Buddha knew this himself when he was, the great time on Vulture Peak when all these unbelievers were there. And before the Buddha could really get going and do his talk, he said, why did you guys go? He let them depart. He didn't try to persuade them. He didn't try to make them stay. He allowed the unbelievers to depart, because then he could talk to people who actually had faith in the way, because it's very hard when people are doubting, cynical. It kind of closes the teaching off in a certain way. So he let all the unbelievers depart, and then he could expound the Dharma. So we need to have true faith. That doesn't mean we need to have perfect faith. We can nourish our faith by training ourselves diligently. Just nourish that heart of aspiration, because we have that, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And developing that faith by doing the practice. Having faith in the practice by doing it. You've got to have some kind of, some kind of faith, or you wouldn't even start. You just think, well, I think I'll just do something else. Doesn't make any sense. We all have a certain amount of faith because we're here and we're practicing the Dharma for ourselves. And to deepen our aspiration and our practice, to nourish that faith is really important, because it's through nourishing that faith that we can keep going. If we didn't have faith in the practice, we couldn't do it. It would be just too hard to make ourselves do it, because it's not a duty. You can't train yourself out of some grey sense of duty. Oh, I really ought to do this. It'll make me better and nicer, and I've been told I should, That doesn't do it. It's not going to work. But to actually turn towards that heart that wants to do it. Even when we don't want to get up in the morning to sit, oh, I'm tired, oh, I think I don't feel well, oh, I'm going to be too busy today, oh, this, that, and the other thing. We all know that kind of resistance. And if we can just cut through that and just get up, sit on our little spot, and then we feel better. Just getting there, that's the hard part. And having got there to our little sitting spot, oh, it's not so bad. Maybe I feel better. Maybe I can sit a little longer, But to get ourselves to do that, to just cut through that resistance that some of us may have, especially early on in training, especially if we're sitting alone. If you're sitting with another person, you can kind of goad each other on, as it were. We all sit together because we get up in the morning and we go. We don't have to think, well, I think I'll wait another 15 minutes. It's not going to work for us. So we get up and we come to the hall. If you're training on your own, it's harder to do that. But if you have years of training, you just do it. But sometimes you have times when it just seems really grey or dry. But that's the time to really keep making that effort. And that nourishes our heart of faith, just doing that, because we see, actually this helps me. Even when I feel terrible, even when I don't feel like it, I don't want to do it, I'm tired, all that, just to get up and do it anyway. And that really helps to deepen and strengthen our faith in the practice, because we see it works, it helps us, no matter how we feel. It always is helpful. Now Dogen's pretend disciple asked about other teachings and practices. Again, why does Dogen regard meditation as better than anything else? He keeps coming back to this. Why meditation? Why do you have to do this? Because Dogen wants to explain in all these different ways why it's a good thing to do. And Dogen says, don't worry about other teachings and practices. And above all, don't get pulled off by intellectual study. He says this a lot. Don't get stuck in scholarship. Don't read the Dharma just in order to look wise or be intellectual or gain some kind of knowledge. Read the Dharma, if you will, to help you with your practice. Otherwise, it's no good for you. It's for practice. It's training that is the important thing. It's not having all sorts of knowledge or looking erudite. That doesn't help at all. He says, reciting the Buddha's name, if you're not doing it with full attention, it's like a frog croaking in a field, Well, people can recite the Buddha's name, and it can be a very strong practice. I've seen it in the East, in temples where people do that. It can be a really powerful practice, because they're doing it with faith and with full attention. They're not just croaking in a field. They're actually really diligent, mindful, and devoted, actually. Deep sincerity there. So in a way, it's what we put into it that matters. And this is exactly what he says. He says, the accent in Buddhism must always be placed on the truth or inaccuracy of the actual training, what we put into it. The excellence, worthlessness, depth or shallowness of the teaching is of secondary importance. It's kind of startling, The teachings of secondary importance. Yes, because what's more important is what we put into it, that we practice with true devotion. There's all sorts of stories of people with a terrible teacher, but because they have a deep heart of faith, they've realized the truth. And in fact, that terrible teacher has helped them because they've seen something in that person, and have been able to follow the way for themselves, but it's their actual training, the truth or inaccuracy, that what we actually put into it, our true aspiration, our faith and sincerity. That's what really is important, more than do this, don't do that, or reading all kinds of stuff and so forth. Just how do we put it into practice? And Dogen comes back to this over and over again, putting it into practice. It's the training that matters, what we do with our own body and mind, Dogen. And to do good training, he says, we need to find a good teacher, or a place where there's good teaching. It does help. And even though it says that the worthlessness or goodness of the teaching is a secondary importance, it does help if you find teaching that's good. It helps you on your way, obviously. So, but it's what we do with it that really matters. He says, all that the followers of Buddhism have to do is study the truth. Understand clearly that the highest wisdom is to be found herein, and that, although we may enjoy it for eternity, we will not always be in harmony with it, simply because we are self-opinionated and desirous of material gain. Such things will hinder us in the way. So all we have to do is study the truth. That means do the practice. It doesn't mean, as I said, intellectual study. It's doing the practice. And then doing the practice, we can find the highest wisdom, he says. However, we won't always be in harmony with it, because we have selfish opinions and desires. They still come up, and they get in the way. We won't be perfect. Even when we reach great wisdom, we still have selfishness that can arise and impede us. We never are beyond that. We never think, okay, I've made it, I'm done, I'm fine, all my self is gone, my selfishness is gone. It's ridiculous. We always have selfishness that can come up and arise and bite us on the nose. And this is very helpful to know. We're never beyond needing to train ourselves. We might think that if only I can realize true wisdom and be perfect, all my troubles will be gone and everything will be fine. Well, not really, no. It doesn't seem to work that way. Because wisdom or truth, it doesn't become our personal possession. Oh, now I've got it. I've got it forever, and I'm beyond any kind of mistake. That's a huge mistake right there, because we can always make mistakes. We're always just human beings. We're never beyond the need to train ourselves and keep coming back and working on our selfishness. Because we can't grab on to wisdom and say, this is mine, now I've got it. We may have access to truth. It can come through us. We're open to it, and we can use it and help ourselves and other beings. But it's not our own possession. Sometimes we act on truth with great wisdom. Sometimes we act like idiots, and we make a complete mess of things. We're not beyond being completely foolish. Selfishness can always arise. I think we all know this, We just have moments of selfishness and think, oh, why did I do that? That was not kind, or that was greedy, or whatever it might be. It can always come up, and it's really helpful to bear that in mind. Just never to get cocky, to think we're beyond needing to really work hard on our training, really work with our, sometimes we see truth, often we don't. Sometimes we act selflessly, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we act with wisdom, sometimes we're just selfish or just foolish or just blind, or even with a good intention we make some mistake. Easy to do. And then we learn something. Okay, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll try and do better next time. But we keep on trying to do our best. We keep on trying to act with wisdom and compassion, with faith in that, and not with selfishness. This is fundamental, working on our selfishness, constantly coming back to, what am I doing, Says Dogen, therefore, when sitting and allowing the Buddha nature to manifest itself, by giving up all opinions and cutting all ties, we enjoy great wisdom quite naturally, for we instantly enter into the world which lies beyond both delusion and enlightenment, wherein there is no difference between the wise and the foolish. It's impossible for anyone who clutches at words to reach this height. So when we truly sit in meditation, and let go of our opinions and attachments. Easier said than done. When we truly sit, whether we're sitting informally in meditation or going about our life, because as we know, sitting in meditation includes all the other aspects of our lives. It's not just formal sitting, it's doing all the things, interacting with other people, all the rest of our life. When we truly sit in meditation, when we are truly still, wherever we are, and we let go of our opinions and attachments, and we let go of our ideas of being wise or foolish, letting go of judgments about ourselves and others, so much of it. Oh, my training is terrible. Oh, I'm doing better than that person. Oh, I'm not like that. All these things. We don't have to worry about whether we're deluded or enlightened, or whether we're wise or completely foolish. We all have foolishness come up, as I say. We all have wisdom arise. It's not something we have that we're stuck with. One moment we can be a Buddha, the next moment we can be an idiot. And then we can go back to being a Buddha again. Oh, look what I did, I'm so sorry. We're not stuck with anything. It's all fluid because it's not our personal possession. We never have something there forever and ever that's ours. We let it come through, we make use of it, and we keep going on, keep working on that selfishness, those opinions and attachments that arise, constant opinions about ourselves, opinions about other people, opinions about training, about meditation, about our practice, about other people's practice. It's endless and it's bottomless, and there's always views. They arise. They may continue to arise our whole life, but we don't have to cling on to them and make them seem real. We don't have to feed them. We don't have to act on them. Oh, there I am, putting myself down again. Oh, there I am, thinking I'm better than that other person. Oh, there I am, criticizing that other person. Oh, look at that. The endless critical mind. So many of us talk about this critical mind. What can I do about this critical mind? It keeps coming up. It may happen the whole of our life, but what do we do? Just to let it go and not feed it, not completely believe it. It's just what the mind does, it seems to be, but we don't have to particularly believe it. And all those things, the thoughts about whether we're wise or foolish, obstructed, enlightened, or whatever, they're just obstructions, because real meditation goes beyond all these things. When we really sit, we know that none of that stuff matters. When we let go of that stuff, just sit there. None of that matters. It's just fine. We lack nothing. Everything is fine, just as it is. And then the thoughts and comparisons and doubts and stuff do arise. We doubt ourselves and so forth, compare ourselves with others. Just keep letting them go. Keep letting them go. Patience, acceptance, Here it is again. We can't be criticized. If we keep criticizing ourselves for our critical mind, it's actually just compounded. We all know what that's like. We're not trying to become perfect people. We're trying to sit beyond all that idea of being a perfect person, the perfect Buddhist, We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to do our very best with what we have. And we all have different stuff to deal with. To do our best without judgment, without blame, without comparison, without criticism. As I said, easier said than done, but you just keep letting it all go. And as I said, bearing in mind that sitting encompasses all the aspects of our life. So whether we're at work and we're comparing ourselves with somebody else, or blaming somebody who's done something in our mind, or at some meeting when you're all hot and cross about what somebody just said, what am I doing with my mind? To come back. Not easy when you're in the middle of a situation. We just try to do our best. To let go of those useless thoughts actually, and clarify, because actually sitting in meditation is it's easier to do that when you're sitting formally than when you're in some situation with 5 other people and you're having a discussion about something. When you're on your own, it's easier to have a kind of a clear mind. Oh, look what I did, look what I said, look what I'm thinking. Okay, let's come back to stillness. No comparisons. Now back to our doubting disciple. Okay, for beginners who know nothing of Buddhism, meditation and training are necessary to realize enlightenment. But what about somebody who's already clearly reached enlightenment? Do they no longer need to practice meditation? And Dogen says it's heretical to believe that training and enlightenment are separable, because as he says over and over again, training and enlightenment go together. They're inseparable, they're one thing. When you train, you're already practicing your enlightenment. For in Buddhism, the two are one and the same. Since training embraces enlightenment, the very beginning of training contains the whole of original enlightenment. As soon as we start to meditate and train ourselves, we're manifesting our enlightenment. We're saying, I don't know everything. That's wisdom. I don't know everything. There's something that I need to aspire to. There's something greater than myself, you know. So training never ends, because we never get beyond that need to train ourselves. Right in the very beginning of our practice, the very first awakening of the desire to meditate, I need to train myself. There's something I don't know. Right at the very beginning, there's that sort of enlightened nature that knows more than what we know with our little mind. And the more we go on in our training, the more we know that we need to keep on going. You never get beyond that need, that simple mind, like the beginner's mind, as they say, that mind that just needs to keep on opening up to something greater than we are. We never completely arrive. Because if we stopped training thinking that we were enlightened, well, we wouldn't be enlightened anymore, because we weren't doing the training anymore. Shakyamuni Buddha always kept training himself, always was open to seeing where something needed to be changed. He'd make these rules, the lay people would get upset because they didn't work, and he'd say, oh, okay, we'll change that, you know. Or something would happen, he'd have some rule, and we'd think, oh no, we need to make a rule about that. He had things he hadn't even thought of, people would get up to. Okay, we need to make a rule about that. He was always open to changing things. Nothing was set in stone. And that's a great example for us. He never got beyond the need to keep working on his practice, keep working on training the monks, you know. He always kept on doing it. He was used by training, Dogen says. I like that. It's used by training. He wasn't in a sense, he wasn't in charge of it in a way. It was something bigger than himself. He was used by the training. It was what he did, it was what he was. And the same for the ancestors, you know, Bakakasho, Bodhidharma, Daikaneno, all of the ancestors, and us, we're used by training. It's bigger than we are. It's not something you just put in a little box and bring out on Sundays or whatever. Our whole life is permeated with our practice. It takes over our life. Well, we still have to make choices, you know. Yes, we have to keep on the way. Having started, better to finish, as they say. We have to keep on doing it, but we always have that choice to make. Over and over again, all day, we have a choice to make. Do I listen to my crabby little mind? Or do I say, no, I'm going to let that go? Do I respond angrily to this thing? Or do I just keep my mouth shut and keep quiet? Do I get up and sit? Or do I stay in bed? Every day, constantly, we have little choices to make. We always are choosing. Even though we're used by training, we're constantly choosing to turn our heart towards the practice, constantly choosing that. Each morning, you know, when we put our kesa or our begesa on our head, if we have one, we renew our aspiration. I wish to unfold the Buddha's teaching that I may help all living things. We say this every day. Every day we need to renew that vow. I want to do it. Yes, I want to do it. Today, I want to do it. We have to keep on doing that. It's nourishing our heart of faith. Just keep on doing the practice. The faith helps us to do our practice, and our practice helps us to nourish the faith. It all works together. And when you're really trying to live that way, working on our selfishness, we're less pulled around by, I like this and I don't want that. You know, all that I want, I don't want. It becomes less of a deal for us, as what I want isn't so much the point. Yes, we might enjoy things. We can enjoy our life. It's not just a round of grey duty. Oh, I have to do this because it's good, you know, it's good to do. Because we want to do what's good. Our heart wants to do what's good. We want to be of help to beings. And it's fine to enjoy things. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're not living enslaved to all our wants and desires. That's the difference. I have to have this, I can't stand that. Just say, well, this is what I've got right now. Acceptance, the key that unlocks the gateless gate. Accepting what comes our way, using it to nourish our faith, our training. Now life actually becomes much richer and more joyful when we live not from selfishness, but from wanting to do what's good. We know that, Dogen keeps saying, you can enjoying true wisdom, We enjoy great wisdom because we're not living from selfishness. We are allowing ourselves to be used by training. Listening to that still small voice, as Rev Master Jiyu would call it. Still small voice that says, I wouldn't do that if I were you. This is good to do now. Don't listen to that selfish voice. No, do the kind thing. Do what's kind. We know what it's like when we don't do what's kind, and what it's like when we do. We may not even notice when we do something kind, but we certainly notice when we do something unkind. It immediately gets our attention. So just constantly doing our best to live from our true nature. We all know this, but to keep coming back to that, to nourish our heart of faith, our aspiration for the way, to keep on getting up in the morning, doing the practice, seeing where we need to make a change, deepen our training, where we may have made a mistake. I need to do something differently, or, oh, I'm really sorry. Just as we keep on doing our training, that is our way to enjoying true wisdom, which is not ours. It just comes through us.